stood by the front door with my suitcase packed, passport clutched in my trembling hand, waiting for the ride that would take me to the airport. 6 months of saving every dollar from my part-time job at the library had finally paid off. A weekend trip to the beach with my best friend for my 18th birthday. The ticket was tucked safely in my jacket pocket, my phone loaded with travel playlists, my heart bursting with excitement for my first real adventure. Then my mom stormed into the room, her face set with that expression I knew too well, the one that meant my feelings were about to become irrelevant. "We're canceling this," she said flatly, snatching the ticket from my pocket before I could react. "Your brother needs new equipment for his soccer camp. The registration deadline is tomorrow." I froze completely, my brain struggling to process what was happening. "You're taking my birthday money for Kieran's camp." My voice came out small and disbelieving. She didn't even flinch, didn't show any sign of guilt or hesitation. My brother Kieran strolled past me in the hallway, grinning smugly while waving brand new cleats in my face. "Thanks, sis," he said mockingly. I whispered, "You're kidding, right?" Mom turned on me with sudden anger. "Don't make this about you, Brisa. Your brother has opportunities you'll never understand. Stop being so selfish." My name is Brisa Wynn, and that was the day I realized I'd always come second in my own family, and I decided it would never happen again. The hours after the cancellation passed in a numb blur of disbelief and grief. My best friend called 3 times asking where I was, and each time I had to explain through tears that I wasn't coming, that my trip had been stolen for my brother's sports equipment. She was furious on my behalf, but her anger couldn't change anything. I watched from my bedroom window as Mom loaded Kieran's new gear into the car, both of them laughing about something I couldn't hear. That evening, Mom posted photos on Facebook with captions celebrating Kieran's big camp surprise and investing in our star athlete's future. She tagged dozens of relatives and friends, collecting likes and congratulatory comments while I sat alone in my dark room feeling completely erased. My father said nothing during dinner, wouldn't meet my eyes, just ate his food in that careful silence he'd perfected over years of avoiding conflict. He always stayed neutral, which really meant he always sided with Mom by refusing to defend me. I began writing everything down in a notebook that night, every instance of favoritism, every dismissal, every time my needs were sacrificed for Kieran's wants. I needed proof that I wasn't imagining this pattern, that I wasn't crazy or overly sensitive like Mom always claimed. The documentation became my lifeline to sanity. 2 days after my ruined birthday, I finally worked up the courage to confront Mom directly about the unfairness. I found her in the kitchen preparing Kieran's favorite dinner and tried to explain calmly how hurt I felt, how hard I'd worked to save that money, how it was supposed to be my special day. She turned on me with immediate defensiveness. "You're being incredibly selfish, Brisa. Your brother works hard for his opportunities. He deserves support." The logic made no sense. I worked hard too, but that never seemed to matter or count for anything. "Why does everything always go to him?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my attempts to stay calm. "Because Kieran has real potential," she snapped. "He's going somewhere. You need to accept your role in this family and stop causing drama." I apologized just to end the confrontation, just to make the tension stop crushing me, even though I'd done nothing wrong. Later that night, I overheard Kieran joking with his friends on the phone. "My sister's lucky she even has a roof over her head," he laughed. "Mom knows who's worth investing in." Those words lodged deep in my chest like shrapnel, painful reminders that my own family saw me as a burden rather than someone deserving of love and support. I cried myself to sleep that night, quieter than usual so nobody would hear. A few weeks later, my art teacher pulled me aside after class with exciting news. She'd been impressed by my design portfolio and wanted me to apply for a competitive creative scholarship program in another city. The program offered mentorship, resources, and exposure to professional opportunities that could change my entire future. I was thrilled, already imagining the possibilities, already planning how I'd make it work. But when I told Mom that evening, her reaction crushed my excitement immediately. "That's during Kieran's regional tournaments," she said dismissively, not even looking up from her phone. "We can't travel twice in 1 month. The family needs to support his games." I stared at her in disbelief. "But this is my opportunity. It's not even the same weekend." She cut me off sharply. I said no, Brisa. Stop being difficult. Your brother's tournaments are more important than some art project. Another dream, erased in seconds without consideration or discussion. I walked to my room feeling hollow, wondering why my ambitions were always classified as hobbies while Kieran's were treated as investments in greatness. The inequality was so blatant, so constant, that I was starting to believe maybe I really was less valuable, less deserving of support and celebration. That thought terrified me more than anything. Despite Mom's refusal, I decided to apply for the scholarship program anyway. I worked on my application in secret, hiding acceptance letters under my mattress, whispering hope into my pillow late at night when everyone else was asleep. The secrecy felt both empowering and heartbreaking. I was old enough to pursue my dreams, but young enough that I still needed permission I'd never receive. When the acceptance email arrived 3 weeks later, I cried silently in the school library, overwhelmed by joy and grief simultaneously. I'd been chosen from hundreds of applicants, recognized for talent my own mother refused to acknowledge. But I couldn't celebrate openly, couldn't share the news with my family without risking everything. I told my best friend Maeve, who squealed with excitement and hugged me tight. "You're getting out," she whispered. "You're actually going to escape." That word, escape, felt exactly right. I wasn't just leaving for a program. I was fleeing a family that had never truly seen me. I began planning carefully, calculating costs and logistics, imagining the freedom of being somewhere my worth wasn't constantly questioned. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely hopeful about my future. That hope lasted exactly 4 days before disaster struck. Mom found the acceptance letter while cleaning my room, which really meant invading my privacy like she'd done throughout my childhood. I came home from school to find her standing in my doorway holding the torn pieces of my future. "How dare you go behind my back?" she hissed, her face red with fury. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by sneaking around and making plans without permission." I tried to explain that I'd told her about the program and she'd refused to let me apply, but she wasn't listening. She'd already decided I was the villain in this story. "You're not going," she declared with finality. "I'm calling them right now to withdraw your acceptance." I begged her not to, actually got on my knees pleading, but she walked away without another word. My scholarship was revoked because I missed the reply deadline while she thought about it for 3 days before calling to decline on my behalf. That evening, I overheard her telling Dad in their bedroom, her voice carrying through the thin walls. "She needs to learn her place in this family. She can't just do whatever she wants." My place. As if I was a servant rather than a daughter, someone whose purpose was serving others' dreams instead of pursuing my own. Something inside me broke permanently that night, not into sadness, but into cold determination. I sat on the front porch that night after everyone had gone to bed, watching streetlights flicker in the summer darkness. The neighborhood was quiet except for distant traffic and crickets chirping in overgrown grass. I felt emptier than I'd ever felt before, hollowed out by years of systematic dismissal and casual cruelty disguised as family dynamics. But beneath the emptiness, something harder was forming, a core of steel replacing the soft hope I'd carried for so long. I whispered to myself, making a promise I intended to keep no matter what obstacles appeared. "One day, I'll have my own ticket to anywhere I want to go, and no one will ever take it away from me again." The words felt like a vow, like drawing a line in the sand of my life between before and after. I would find a way to build something they couldn't control or cancel, something entirely mine that existed beyond their approval or permission. I didn't know how yet, didn't have resources or connections or experience, but I had anger converted into fuel and grief transformed into determination. Those would have to be enough to start with. I went back inside and began researching ways teenagers could make money independently, ways to save faster, ways to escape sooner. My education in self-reliance had officially begun. I started a side hustle designing digital flyers for classmates who needed help with projects or small events. Word spread quickly through school that I was good and cheap, charging just a few dollars per design. It wasn't much money, but it was the first income I'd ever earned completely on my own, independent of allowance or birthday gifts that could be taken away. A local cafe owner noticed one of my flyers posted on a community board and tracked me down at school. "Did you design this?" she asked, showing me the bright poster advertising a student music showcase. When I confirmed I had, she offered me $20 to create posters for her cafe's weekly open mic nights. $20 felt like a fortune, like validation that my skills had real value in the world beyond my family's dismissive judgment. I took the job immediately and delivered designs that made her genuinely excited. She paid me and referred me to 3 other small business owners who needed similar work. Suddenly, I had a steady stream of small projects, money accumulating in a secret account Mom didn't know existed. Each deposited dollar felt like a tiny piece of freedom, a building block toward the future I was constructing without anyone's permission or knowledge. The work kept me sane during those months, giving me purpose and proof that I was capable of more than my family believed possible. A car incident happened on a Tuesday afternoon that I'll never forget. Kieran borrowed Mom's car without permission and crashed it into a mailbox while texting and driving. The damage was significant: dented bumper, cracked headlight, scratched paint along the entire passenger side. I expected consequences, maybe even some acknowledgement that he'd been reckless and irresponsible. Instead, Mom screamed at me for 20 minutes about how I should have reminded him to check the oil level before he left. "You knew he was taking the car," she yelled, despite me having been at school with no knowledge of his plans. "You should have said something about maintenance. This is partially your fault." The injustice was so absurd that I actually laughed, not from humor, but from the bitter absurdity of being blamed for something I had zero involvement in or control over. That night, I posted a sarcastic tweet that simply said, "Reminder, some of us are born scapegoats. Check your family role assignment for details." The tweet went viral locally within hours, shared by hundreds of people who recognized the dynamic I was describing from their own lives. Strangers commented with their own stories of being family scapegoats, of siblings who could do no wrong while they were blamed for everything. The validation from complete strangers meant more than any approval from my family ever could have. I wasn't imagining the unfairness. It was real, recognizable, and others had survived it too. A woman I didn't know approached me at the cafe, where I was working on designs one afternoon. She introduced herself as a college professor who'd overheard me talking on the phone about graphic design and family challenges. "I couldn't help but overhear," she said kindly, "and I wanted to tell you about a program that might interest you." She explained a youth entrepreneur incubator that helped young people launch real businesses with mentorship, resources, and small startup grants. The program was specifically designed for students from difficult backgrounds who showed determination and talent despite obstacles. "You remind me of myself at your age," she said, sliding her business card across the table. "Apply. I think you'd be perfect for it." I applied that same night, pouring everything into the application essay. My design work, my story of systematic dismissal, my determination to build something nobody could take from me. Writing it felt cathartic, like finally telling the truth to someone who might actually listen and care. 2 weeks later, I received the acceptance email along with notification that I'd been selected for a small startup grant to help launch my business officially. I was one of 20 students chosen from over 300 applicants. This time, I decided, Mom wouldn't find out until I was already gone, and it was too late for her to sabotage my future again. Some opportunities were too precious to risk. When I finally told my family about the entrepreneur program, I'd already completed half the paperwork and made arrangements to start within 2 weeks. I announced it at dinner, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Mom's reaction was immediate and explosive. "You're not doing this," she shouted, slamming her fork down on the table. "Who's going to watch the house while we're traveling for Kieran's tournament? Who's going to handle things here?" I stared at her in disbelief. "I'll be gone," I said calmly, the first real defiance I'd ever shown. "This is happening whether you approve or not. I'm 18 now. You can't stop me." Her face went red with rage. "If you walk out that door for this ridiculous program, don't expect to come back. I won't have you disrespecting this family." My father finally spoke, his voice quiet and careful. "Maybe we should discuss this calmly," but Mom cut him off viciously. "There's nothing to discuss. She's being selfish and ungrateful, and I'm done enabling it." I looked at both my parents and my smirking brother, seeing clearly for the first time that I'd never really been part of their family unit. I'd been an accessory, expected to orbit around Kieran's needs without having any of my own. "Then I guess I'm done too," I said quietly, standing from the table. I walked to my room and started packing essentials, my hands shaking but my resolve solid as stone. Mom made good on her threat faster than I'd expected. Within an hour of our confrontation, she packed all my belongings into garbage bags and stacked them by the front door. "If you want to act grown, figure it out yourself," she said coldly, watching me carry bags to my car without offering any help. My father stood in the doorway looking uncomfortable, but saying nothing, maintaining his careful neutrality that had enabled Mom's behavior for years. Kieran watched from his bedroom window, and I saw him laugh before closing the curtain. I had nowhere to go except to my friend Maeve's house, where her parents immediately offered me their garage apartment. "Stay as long as you need," Maeve's mom said, hugging me while I cried. "You're always welcome here." That night, sleeping on an air mattress in a converted garage, I felt both devastated and strangely free. I'd lost my family, but I'd gained something more valuable: the ability to make my own choices without fear of punishment or manipulation. I pulled out my notebook and started sketching logo ideas for the business I was about to launch. After testing dozens of concepts, I settled on a name that felt right: Rise Media. It represented exactly what I was doing: rising from the ashes of rejection, building upward from rock bottom, refusing to stay down just because someone had pushed me there. My new life was beginning, and they couldn't stop it anymore. The Entrepreneur Incubator connected me with Soren Idris, a quiet marketing strategist in his 30s who'd volunteered to mentor students in the program. He reviewed my portfolio during our first meeting, nodding thoughtfully at each design. "You've got natural talent," he said finally. "But more importantly, you've got something most designers lack. You understand pain and transformation. That's what makes campaigns actually connect with people." He was impressed by my work ethic and my ability to turn suffering into purposeful creativity rather than bitterness. "Most people get stuck in their trauma," he explained. "You're using yours as fuel. That's rare and valuable." Over the following weeks, Soren taught me everything about running a legitimate business: legal structures, client management, pricing strategies, portfolio presentation, networking tactics. He treated my dreams seriously, never once suggesting they were too ambitious or unrealistic. When he landed a small freelance project for one of his own clients, he offered me the design work. "I could do this myself," he admitted, "but I'd rather give you the opportunity and see what you can do with it. Consider it your first professional test." I worked on that project for 3 days straight, pouring everything I'd learned into creating something genuinely excellent. When the clients saw my work, they were thrilled, and Soren paid me double what we'd originally agreed. "Don't look back," he told me. "Just build forward. The past can't touch you if you keep moving toward better things." My design for Soren's client went unexpectedly viral on social media. The campaign was for a small, sustainable fashion brand, and my visual approach perfectly captured their message about transformation and renewal. The client's sales increased by thousands within the first week, and they publicly credited my design work in their success posts. Other small businesses started reaching out asking if I was available for similar projects. Soren helped me set fair pricing and professional boundaries, making sure I wasn't undervaluing my work just because I was young and new to freelancing. Within a month, I had more work than I could handle alone, earning more than I'd made in 6 months at the library. The money meant security and possibility. I could afford rent, could save for future opportunities, could build the independent life I'd only dreamed about weeks earlier. But more than the money, the work itself validated everything I'd believed about my own capabilities despite years of being told I wasn't good enough or ambitious enough to succeed. Clients respected my ideas, implemented my suggestions, and recommended me to others based on results rather than age or experience. In the professional world, my work spoke for itself, and that work said I was talented, creative, and absolutely worthy of success. The contrast with my family's constant dismissal couldn't have been clearer or more vindicating. Mom called after 3 months of complete silence, and foolishly, I answered, hoping maybe she'd realized how badly she'd treated me. Instead, she skipped any apology or acknowledgement and immediately made a request. "Kieran needs to borrow your laptop for a school project," she said casually, as if we were on good terms and I owed her favors. "His broke and we can't afford a new one right now. Can you drop it off this weekend?" I was so stunned by the audacity that I actually laughed out loud. "No," I said simply. "I can't do that." She sounded genuinely confused, as if my refusal made no logical sense. Why not? It's just a laptop. Don't be petty, Brisa. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm and professional. It's not just a laptop, Mom. It's company property for my business. I can't lend it out. The words felt powerful, claiming ownership of something, establishing boundaries, refusing to accommodate demands that ignored my own needs and priorities. Company property, she repeated mockingly. What company? You're playing entrepreneur in someone's garage. I smiled even though she couldn't see it. Rise Media LLC, we're registered with the state and everything, but thanks for checking in. I hung up before she could respond, and she didn't call back. That small victory felt enormous. I'd said no to her for the first time in my life and survived the consequences. The sky didn't fall. My worth didn't decrease. I just existed on my own terms, and that was enough. 6 months after leaving home, Soren and I officially registered Rise Media LLC as a real company with legal status and business accounts. We'd accumulated enough steady clients that expansion made sense, and Soren offered to become my business partner rather than just my mentor. You've outgrown needing a teacher, he said. What you need now is someone who believes in where you're going and wants to help you get there faster. Together, we landed a significant project, a regional travel influencer campaign for a boutique resort chain. The campaign required coordinating multiple designers, photographers, and content creators across several locations. Ironically, some of the influencers we worked with posted content from luxury resorts Kieran had always dreamed about visiting but could never afford. I didn't mention that connection to anyone, but I thought about it occasionally, about how life had a strange way of balancing scales without anyone forcing it. The campaign was challenging but successful, generating measurable increases in bookings for every resort we featured. Our client testimonial was glowing, and suddenly Rise Media had credibility beyond just being a scrappy startup. We were a legitimate agency, producing real results for clients who paid serious money for quality work. My garage office felt increasingly inadequate for the business we were building, so we started looking at actual commercial spaces we could afford to lease. The growth was thrilling and terrifying simultaneously, proof that I'd been right to bet on myself when everyone else had bet against me. One of my travel campaign designs went massively viral online, shared hundreds of thousands of times across multiple platforms. The image showed a silhouette walking toward a sunrise with text that read, "Every journey starts with freedom. Yours begins now." Viewers connected with the message emotionally, commenting about their own journeys away from difficult situations, toxic relationships, and limiting beliefs. People shared it with captions about personal transformation, about choosing themselves despite others' objections, about building lives worth living rather than lives dictated by family obligation. The campaign generated so much attention that travel publications contacted us about featuring Rise Media in articles about innovative marketing from young entrepreneurs. Suddenly, I was being interviewed about my business philosophy and creative process, telling sanitized versions of my story that omitted the most painful details while keeping the inspiring core message. The recognition felt surreal. I'd gone from being told I wasn't good enough to run a family store to being celebrated as a self-made prodigy in regional business circles. Media outlets wanted quotes, potential clients wanted consultations, other young entrepreneurs wanted advice on replicating my success. The attention was overwhelming, but validating in ways I desperately needed after years of being invisible in my own family. I was being seen, finally, for who I actually was rather than who someone else needed me to be. My mother's Facebook presence became increasingly bitter during the months of my growing success. She posted long rants about ungrateful children, about how kids these days forget who raised them, about the sacrifices parents make that go unappreciated. I scrolled past those posts without commenting, knowing engagement would only feed her victim narrative. She never mentioned me by name, but anyone who knew our family history understood exactly who she meant. Then one day, the tone shifted dramatically. Mom posted a glowing tribute with photos of Kieran in his soccer uniform. "So proud of our star athlete. Kieran is heading to Europe for an exclusive training retreat, all thanks to his amazing sponsors who recognize his incredible talent. Dreams really do come true for those who work hard." The post collected dozens of congratulatory comments from relatives and family friends, everyone praising Kieran's success and Mom's excellent parenting. I stared at that post for a long time, my mind working through the implications. Europe training retreat with sponsors. The timing seemed remarkably convenient given what I knew about industry connections through my work. A suspicion began forming, too perfect to be coincidence but too ironic to be planned. I opened my business email and searched for recent project inquiries, my heart racing as pieces started clicking into place. When I found what I was looking for, I actually laughed out loud with the beautiful irony of it all. Fate wasn't just serving dessert, it was serving an entire feast of poetic justice I could never have orchestrated myself. The email had arrived 2 weeks earlier from a luxury sports retreat organization, seeking promotional sponsors for their upcoming European training program for promising young athletes. They wanted Rise Media to create a comprehensive branding campaign featuring their selected participants, with special focus on one particular athlete they were particularly excited about, Kieran Wynn, rising soccer talent from our region. The retreat organization had no idea about our family connection, had chosen Rise Media purely based on our portfolio and reputation for impactful campaigns. They were offering significant payment for the work, including travel coordination, press kits, social media content, and sponsor relationship management. Soren reviewed the project details with careful attention. "We should probably pass on this one," he said slowly, understanding the complicated dynamics involved. Conflict of interest, potential complications, too many personal variables. I stared at the proposal for a long time, weighing options and considering consequences. Part of me wanted to refuse purely out of spite, to let Kieran's opportunity fall through just like mine had been destroyed. But another part, the part that had grown stronger through building something real, saw different possibilities. "No," I said finally, my decision crystallizing with absolute clarity. "Let's do it." Business is business, and this is good business regardless of personal history. Soren looked at me carefully. "You're sure?" I nodded. "I'm sure. Let's give him the opportunity nobody gave me, and let's do it so well that the irony becomes impossible to ignore." I began arranging every detail of Kieran's European experience through Rise Media's partner brand, working anonymously through our professional channels so the connection wouldn't be obvious until exactly the right moment. I oversaw every detail of Kieran's sponsorship with meticulous care, ensuring everything was handled professionally and generously. I arranged first-class plane tickets when economy would have sufficed, upgraded his accommodation to luxury suites, organized press opportunities that would boost his athletic profile significantly, and even included travel stipends that covered expenses far beyond the basic necessities. Revenge, I'd learned, didn't have to be cruel to be effective. Sometimes the most devastating revenge was simply succeeding so completely that your success became undeniable to the people who doubted you. Every upgraded detail of Kieran's trip was proof that I'd achieved something they'd sworn was impossible. I'd built a company successful enough to sponsor elite athletic programs, to make dreams come true for people including the brother who'd watched me get thrown out without protest. The irony was exquisite. Mom had canceled my trip to pay for his camp equipment, and now I was paying for his European adventure with money I'd earned through the company I'd built after she'd thrown me out. Justice didn't need to be loud or vindictive. It just needed to be undeniable. I finished finalizing all the arrangements and marked the project as complete in our system. The launch event was scheduled for the following month, with press coverage and a public introduction of all sponsored athletes. I marked the date on my calendar and smiled. The reveal would be perfect, public, and absolutely unforgettable for everyone involved. The launch event took place at the airport's private terminal, designed to generate media coverage for both the athletes and their sponsors. Cameras lined the entrance, reporters prepared questions, and families gathered to see their athletes off with fanfare and celebration. I arrived early with Soren, dressed professionally, and carrying the branded press materials we'd created for the occasion. Kieran walked in with his team and luggage, confidence radiating from every gesture. He posed for photos, gave brief interviews about his excitement, thanked his unnamed sponsors graciously. Then he turned and saw me standing beside the Rise Media banner we'd set up for sponsor recognition. His face drained of all color, confusion, and recognition warring in his expression. He walked over slowly, his teammates following with curious interest. "You!" he stammered, looking between me and the banner with growing understanding. "You're the sponsor." I smiled calmly, professionally, letting the moment stretch before responding. "Not exactly," I corrected gently. "I'm the creative director for the agency that manages your sponsorship campaign. Rise Media, that's my company. I oversee the accounts, coordinate the logistics, and yes, I sign the checks that pay for experiences like this." The cameras caught his reaction, photographers sensing dramatic tension even if they didn't understand the full context. His teammates started putting pieces together, whispering among themselves about family dynamics they'd probably heard mentioned before. "Welcome aboard," I added warmly, extending my hand for a professional handshake he accepted automatically. "We're really excited about your potential. This is going to be an amazing opportunity for your athletic career." My mother arrived at the terminal 15 minutes later, dressed up for the occasion of seeing her successful son off to Europe. She was already in full proud parent mode, accepting congratulations from other families and sharing details about Kieran's bright future. Then a reporter spotted the Rise Media banner and asked for quotes from the company's founder for her article. "Is the founder available for comment?" she called out to Soren. He gestured toward me with a slight smile. "Right here." Brisa's the founder and CEO. I stepped toward the microphone, and Mom's head whipped around at the sound of my name. Her jaw literally dropped as she saw me standing there professionally dressed, company credentials hanging around my neck, being treated with respect by media and event organizers. "I'm proud to invest in young athletes who believe in themselves and work hard for their dreams," I said clearly into the microphone, choosing words with deliberate care. "Programs like this change lives by providing opportunities that might otherwise be impossible. Everyone deserves the chance to pursue their potential." The reporter nodded, taking notes. "And what inspired you to sponsor this particular program?" I glanced at my mother's shocked face, at Kieran's uncomfortable expression, at my father who'd appeared beside Mom looking equally stunned. "Personal experience," I answered honestly. "Understanding how much opportunities matter when you're young and trying to prove yourself. Nobody should miss their chance because of circumstances beyond their control." Mom's face cycled through shock, confusion, anger, and something that might have been shame if she was capable of it. The event concluded with final photos and boarding calls. Athletes gathered their luggage and said goodbyes to families, excitement building as departure became imminent. Kieran approached me hesitantly, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Why would you do this?" he asked quietly, genuine confusion in his voice. "After everything that happened, after Mom kicked you out after." He stopped, seeming unable to finish listing his family's failures. I looked at him calmly, feeling no anger or bitterness, just distant observation of someone I'd once called brother. "Because I could," I said simply. "Because I built something successful enough that I can afford to be generous even to people who weren't generous to me. That's not about you, it's about who I choose to be." He nodded slowly, processing implications he probably wasn't ready to fully understand. "For what it's worth," he mumbled, "I'm sorry, I was a jerk. I just always did what Mom wanted and she wanted." "I know," I interrupted gently. "But you're an adult now. You can choose differently going forward, enjoy Europe, play well, make the most of this opportunity." He walked towards security looking smaller somehow, diminished by grace he hadn't earned. Later, as attendees dispersed, Mom cornered me near the exit. She was shaking with emotion I couldn't quite identify. Rage, confusion, humiliation, maybe even a glimmer of unwanted pride. "You did this," she hissed. "You sponsored his entire trip." I met her eyes steadily, no longer afraid of her disapproval or anger. "Yes, through my company, the one you said was playing entrepreneur. Turns out we're successful enough to sponsor elite athletic programs now." Mom's call came 3 hours after the airport event, and this time I let it go to voicemail intentionally, letting her scream into the recording. I listened afterward, her voice distorted with fury and confusion. "How dare you ambush us like that, making us look foolish in front of everyone. You think you're so special now with your little company. You used Kieran to show off. This is manipulative and cruel and—" The message cut off when she ran out of time. She called back immediately, and this time I answered, my voice calm and measured. "Hi, Mom." She launched into another tirade, but I interrupted quietly. You canceled my trip to pay for his camp equipment. Remember that? You took the ticket right out of my pocket on my 18th birthday and didn't even apologize. Silence fell on the other end. I just paid for his European training retreat, an opportunity worth 10 times what my canceled trip cost, and I did it through the business I built after you threw me out for wanting to pursue my dreams. More silence. So if you're calling to yell at me for being successful enough to sponsor your favorite child, maybe take a moment and think about how we got here. I kept my voice even, not angry, just stating facts she couldn't deny. I didn't do this to hurt anyone or show off. I did it because it was good business, and because I can afford to be generous even to people who weren't generous to me. That says more about who I've become than anything else. I paused, then added softly, Happy travels, Mom. I ended the call before she could respond and immediately blocked her number, choosing peace over continued conflict. 6 months later, I sat in my new office overlooking the city. Natural light flooding through floor-to-ceiling windows onto walls decorated with framed campaign photos and award certificates. Rise Media had expanded beyond anything I'd imagined during those early garage days, with a full team of talented people who shared my vision for meaningful work. We'd just launched our newest campaign, one I'd designed personally with particular care and emotional investment. The image showed open roads stretching toward horizons, with bold text reading, Gift yourself the trip they said you didn't deserve. The campaign generated immediate viral attention, resonating with thousands of people who'd been dismissed, doubted, or diminished by people who should have supported them. We partnered with travel companies offering freedom scholarships for young people escaping difficult family situations, providing funded trips for those who'd never had opportunities to explore beyond their limiting circumstances. It was my way of turning pain into purpose, of using success to help others avoid the suffering I'd endured. I closed my laptop and looked around my beautiful office, earned through work, built through determination, maintained through refusing to let cruelty define my potential. My phone buzzed with a message from Maeve. Saw the new campaign, I'm crying, you're amazing. I smiled and typed back. I didn't need their approval to take off. I just needed wings. The truth of that statement settled over me like peace, profound, hard-won, absolutely unshakable. They'd tried to clip my wings, tried to keep me small and serving their needs. Instead, they taught me exactly what I refused to become, and in running from their limitations, I discovered how high I could actually fly. That was a gift, though probably not the one they'd intended to give. I was grateful anyway, in my own way, for the lessons learned through suffering. Sometimes the best revenge is simply becoming someone so successful that your story inspires others, so free that their opinions become irrelevant noise, so content that their validation becomes something you no longer need or want. I'd achieved all three. That was enough. That was everything.